If you had trauma in the past, you probably struggle sometimes to get things done, to stick with things that you begin. So why is that? Even when you're actively healing PTSD from childhood, there are trauma patterns that can come out of nowhere, that can make you fragile at times. One day you feel like you're good, you're full of energy and ambition, and you're focused, you're working hard. And then the next day you're like, hey, why don't I step up a little here? And you take on something new, or you put yourself out there in a new way, and then, bam, you crash. It's a thing trauma survivors do, like a cycle or a wave pattern, you know? Have you had that? Where you go up, you're doing good, you keep busy, and then you withdraw. It's not depression that I'm talking about here. It's more like going into a shell. Is it bad? It can be very bad. It can ruin your chances of success in life. People don't really talk about this, but I've seen it over and over again. I suffered with it myself. And yes, there is a way to heal it. So here's what crashing looks like. First, complex PTSD involves neurological dysregulation that can activate when you're under stress, or sometimes for no reason at all. When you're dysregulated, it can be hard to focus, you get spaced out, you can't really feel how much time is passing, and you feel really sensitive sometimes, or even overreactive to negative things like criticism or feeling left out. So these subtle ups and downs of neurological functioning, and there are so many of them, in your life throughout the day, it means that working 8 hours straight on a regular schedule is like forcing a square peg into a round hole. I've noticed that people with past trauma, more than most people, work in irregular bursts, sprints, and then quiet times. When you're on a roll, you can focus for a period of time. It might be hours, it might be days if you're lucky, could be even longer than that. Oh, that's a happy state, right? So let's call that humming along. And then, usually following a big step that you take because you have some confidence, because you've been humming along, you crash. And crashes don't always look like anything, but they are very much something. It's a terrible countervailing force that comes to pull you back down when you start getting a little too free, a little too real, a little too open, and that fragile side of you reaches in and tries to just pull you back where it thinks you're safe down here. So the motivation is safety to pull you back down. Something in you is trying to keep you safe, but the outcome is self-sabotage. So you get a promotion, you feel guilty. Or you lose some weight, you gain it back. And you get a little money, you waste it. CPTSD feels uncomfortable when you ascend to a new level. Now, crashes aren't always devastating or life-destroying. It's usually more like a period of sleepiness or vagueness or sometimes resentment or resistance. You have your reasons, like, I really don't want to be productive right now. That's what it feels like in the moment. It doesn't look like any big thing necessarily. You might stop going to work, but usually you keep going to work and you keep going to the things that you go to, but you're totally hiding. If you're not trying to do anything big in your life, you can hide that pretty well. But if you're trying to do something big and you're crashing, you might keep showing up for work, but things, it might not be dramatic. It's just that things don't go anywhere. You take on a project and it goes on longer than you thought. It's not really getting off the ground. Everyone knows what that's like. The project gets no liftoff. You make a start, but you can't get it done. Or you never start. It's just talking about it. I know that one. And because it's cyclical, eventually you'll have the urge to try something again, maybe months or years later when things have been going well for you and you've got a little momentum, and then you put yourself out there and bam, the crash cycle begins again. So there are hard crashes and there are subtle crashes, which can be just as destructive to anything real and true and important you're trying to create in your life. For me, it was back when I wrote my first book, when I made my first film also. I did really well for a first-timer in both of those areas, and I was encouraged for real to keep pursuing both of those things, film and writing, but it was hard work. And it involved a lot of putting myself out there and even getting some criticism and feeling exposed to the public. And I remember after the film was done, a woman friend who had participated at a couple of the shoots as an extra was talking to me. And it was this great little film. Everybody in it and their families came to the screening. We had a party. The film won an award. And I was over the moon with my accomplishment. You know, I did it all in my spare time while I held down a full-time day job as an admin assistant at a hospital. And this woman friend who had some issues of her own, just out of the blue said something like, "You think everybody had a fun time, but actually it was really awful for everyone because you were awful." And she said I was a bitch. And I started crying, and I really took it in, like I believed her. And I remember I was sitting on the floor next to the coffee table in her living room, and she said, "Yeah, you know, it wasn't just me, it was everyone who felt this way." And it was like, you know, it was like a knife in my heart. And I felt ashamed. And that night, I called everybody who had been in the film, and I asked them, you know, was I really bad? And they all said, no, that was really fun. You were fine. We loved it. That was great. Let's do it again. But what did I do? I gave up. I crashed. I learned so much from making my first film. And instead of taking all that learning and fun and making another one, I turned against myself. I kept just being an admin assistant. And instead of writing scripts and setting up shoots with my friends, I just fell back into watching TV at night, like for years. And this happened with my book too. The book did well, and I started getting all these invitations to speak and be on radio shows and to write columns. But I had a boss at the time in my day job who said that the head of the whole organization had said that my writing was a conflict of interest and that if I wrote any more, I'd be fired. Well, my boss said, you know, that if it were up to him, of course, I could write. But, you know, the boss's boss wasn't okay with it. I did stop writing, but 2 years later, I was at a conference with the president of the big national organization who had supposedly said this, that I couldn't do it anymore. And I asked her, and I said, you know, now that we're kind of friends, I just want to ask about something that happened a couple years ago. You know, I wrote a book. It was doing really well. And you said I had to stop writing or I'd get fired. And she was just like, what? I never said that. I would never say that. We want people who are, you know, ambitious like that. We loved your book. We thought it was great. We bought it. We loved it. I could hardly even compute it for a minute. I was like, what? So I was like, okay, thank you. But what I had to face is that the boss that I had been working with for years sabotaged me, that he, you know, shut me down out of, who knows, we can speculate if he was jealous or I don't know. I can't really see a scenario where he was sincerely worried that I wouldn't do my job. I did a great job on that job. So I was faced with the horrible reality that somebody I trusted would do that to me. And so what did I do? Did I go back to him and say, hey, you told me your boss said I couldn't publish again or I'd get fired, but that's not true. Like, I know her really well now, and she didn't do that. So why did you threaten my livelihood like that? Why did you make me stop doing this great thing that was making me successful? Well, that's not what I said. I said nothing. I never said anything. I crashed. So I kept working for him for years. And because I participated in his sabotage of me, I didn't write again for 18 years until I started the Crappy Childhood Fairy blog. In all, I worked under that guy for 10 years. And I wish I had just cut it short as soon as I recognized that that kind of level of sabotage was going on. It was such a dead end for me. But because I took it on inside and got, you know, frozen and melted down. And then I was having kids and all these things happened that I didn't carry on. So technically I could have written, but sometimes the greatness in you is held back by a fear that seems small, but is so significant that you could go your whole life never becoming your real self or doing the really good thing that you're capable of doing. So until I started Crappy Childhood Fairy, I didn't write. And now I write and write and write, and I do it every week. I do it every day. So 6+ years ago, I wrote my first blog post for Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I was very rusty at first. I had a really hard time getting anything on paper. I did a blog post, I don't know, at first maybe every month or something. Sometimes I'd go 3 months. It was really hard to do, and I was doing it on the side on top of the job I already had. And what happened was that movement, like beginning, you just start writing and then you get momentum, like something is liberated in you because now you're freer. And I'm freer because every year that goes by in my life, I've used my daily practice more and more to really unearth the real me out of all the fearful and resentful thoughts that have been just suppressing me and thinking I had to go along with somebody who would tell me I can't write or I'd lose my job, right? So I'm following my calling. And if you're going to do that, and I recommend you seek that out, because this is where happiness is, where you really get to do what you're best at, what you're made to do, but you get stuck from doing it when you feel suppressed by your life circumstances, by the fear and resentment that you've got. And how that will manifest is that you try, but you cannot sustain it. That's what a crash is. It's the unsustainability of you following your natural path. So you're making it sustainable. And until you can do that, when you're suppressed like that through outer things and inner things, when you can't get yourself, just out there to do what you were made to do, you will feel frustrated. There will be a low-level depression every time you think about it. You'll be confronted sometimes with the indignity and the sort of insult of people being hard on you about doing things that were not really what you were meant to be doing anyway. And you took the job, so it's their right to expect you to do the job, right? But you took the wrong job. You followed the wrong path because you were so accustomed to crashing. You thought that you could not dare to follow the path you wanted. So it's all about get back on your path. Get back on your path and make it sustainable for yourself. So how do you do that? Here it is. I learned to modulate my crashes. That means make them not like this, but like this. Not so intense. If you're a person who crashes, if you fall off your game from time to time to the degree that it's really taking away from the quality of your life and your sense of freedom and confidence to pursue what you really want to be doing, I want to tell you how to modulate your crashes. Crashing follows a very similar pattern to a lot of other things that go with CPTSD. Notice that crashing looks a lot like neurological dysregulation. It gets triggered by something. You don't notice it at first necessarily. It distorts your perception, making you really vulnerable to discouragement and criticism. It comes with a physical state. Sometimes it's like physical agitation or a bit of a torpor. You just can't get your energy going. There is often a full self-attack involved. And self-attack doesn't help, right? It can feel like the crashing experience is something someone is doing to you, like so-and-so really upset me and now I can't focus. But notice that even when another person goes along with you on this, maybe apologizes for upsetting you, it doesn't solve the problem. They can't fix it because the crash has already been set in motion, so it's inside. That's because it's about the brain state that you're now slogging around in. And this is a lot like dysregulation. If you're on this channel much, I talk about neurological dysregulation. It's a common, little glitch that your nervous system can go into. It goes with childhood trauma. Everybody, in fact, gets dysregulated sometimes. Most people, virtually all people, can eventually re-regulate. But when you had trauma, it can be harder to come back. You go down farther, you stay there longer, it's harder to come back. So when that crash gets activated, it colors everything you see. It makes you think your efforts they're all a waste. Your talent is absolutely worthless. Nobody cares or wants to read your stupid book or watch your idiotic movie or eat the horrible dinner you made or be your boyfriend or whatever terrible thought fills your mind in there when you put yourself out there and get met with discouragement. It is so important when you realize you're in a brain state that it's a normal reaction to stress or discouragement, which are always part of life, and therefore you can stop beating yourself up. Beating yourself up only makes it worse, right? When you notice you're crashing, just treat it like a brain state and get to work supporting your brain. It's like, you were trying to get things done. Oops, crash. Let's get to work on my brain, change paths, build myself back up so that I can get back to work. So here's how you do that. You can develop routines. Our brains like routines and they find them relaxing, especially when trauma has made things kind of chaotic. And it's hard sometimes to stick with routines, but you're going to need to keep accepting that and embracing your efforts anyway. And it can take time to get consistent. You want consistency because any kind of emotional drama or a crazy schedule, it drains your energy and it's putting you at risk for a crash. So do you go long spells without eating? Well, I never do, but I know some people do. You want to stay consistently nourished. Do you stay up all night and then sleep all day? That's going to set you up for a crash, that irregular sleep schedule. If you tend to lose your temper, if you're emotionally dysregulated, if you're a people pleaser, if you end up in quick relationships with people you don't know, all of those things can mess up the gentle routine your brain loves, and it sets you up for a crash. Now, you don't have to be boring or live like a perfect little princess. That's my worst fear. It's good to live your life and do new things sometimes, but you want to overall keep things within parameters that don't drain everything out of you. When you're emotionally or physically exhausted, your mind plays tricks on you and self-sabotages right when things are hard, right when a new job brings a challenge in front of you. If your well is full, you can get through the challenge. If you're already drained from a bunch of crazy stuff happening in your life, you're going to want to find an excuse to withdraw. And you will. You call in sick, fall into resentment. You believe that you're helpless, hopeless. You lash out at society. You give up and disappear. So you don't want big swings here. No big swings. Just walk in the path. Remember, because you have CPTSD, and in a way it's like having diabetes, where, yes, you have it, but if you take care of it and follow a way of life that supports you, you can keep it under control and maybe even reverse it. So CPTSD is like that. And this model also, it's similar to crashing. Diabetics take insulin. And in the same way, you might need to do things that keep you balanced and resilient and able to handle hard things, risks, criticisms, little embarrassments, periods of intense effort that wear you down. You keep yourself balanced with decent sleep, decent diet, support from friends. Don't skimp on that one. Hardly anything works when you try to do it in isolation. You can learn to calm the triggers that tend to set off the crash by becoming aware and learning to discharge the fearful and resentful emotions and thoughts that cloud your thinking when you're crashing. Now, if you get those hamster wheel negative thoughts, I really want to encourage you to try my daily practice techniques. If you watch my videos, this always comes up, but I've got a free course. It's linked in the description section under all my videos. It's on the free tools page of my website where there's a bunch of free tools, and the course is the diamond in the gem pile there. And it's the most important thing you can do in my program. And this is a good way to get some calm, some ease inside, which helps you keep your brain and emotions just a little more level, a little more attentive each day. You might have to, when you go to the description section, some people are like, I don't see it. So you'll see like a few lines there in the description under the video, but there's a little more button. You've got to click that and it will open up all the way and you'll see all the things I got in there, all kinds of things. Now, if you love this topic and you're curious about this dysregulation thing that's kind of underneath this problem, I've got a video lined up for you here all about what it's like. You will find that right here. And I will see you very soon.